up, guys? Welcome to the 45th episode of the All That Podcast. We're here to talk about an interesting conversation, an interesting topic, an interesting social media moment, an interesting fatherly moment, an interesting moment, period. So everybody who hasn't been like living under a rock has heard that T.I. was on a podcast. And for those of you who are not watching, who might be, older, white, or older person, period, T.I. is an American rapper who uses big words. Anyway, so T.I. was on a podcast, and he let the world know that he goes with his daughter to the gynecologist to see if her hymen is still intact, to ensure that she is still, in fact, a virgin. So, when this came out, everybody was like, what the hell is going on? Like, this is sick, T.I. So, I just... We're laughing, but it's kind of, we're laughing. You know how you have an uncomfortable laugh?
It's like cringy.
Yeah, it's like,
yeah,
that kind of laugh. So I wanted to use this situation as a base to talk about, some broader topics that has to do with womanhood. And, of course, I'm a man, so I can't talk about these things. So I brought on Andrea. Introduce yourself.
Hello.
And Mariana. Introduce yourself.
Hola.
So, ladies, I'll start with you, Andrea. When you first heard that T.I. said this and that he did this, what was your reaction?
Well, I feel just like a lot of women. Initially, I was like very uncomfortable. It was almost like... First, I saw the news about it, right? And then I was like, okay, well, let me go see what this is about. And so I went to go listen to the podcast myself. So when I was listening to it, I was like, this is disgusting. And the way that people are, like, the ladies in there were making light of the situation and making jokes out of it, it was, like, very uncomfortable to me.
Let me ask you this. I don't mean to cut you off. But a lot of people I know just went off of the clip and, the headlines. So you are a person who actually watched the podcast. So how did the conversation even start?
Right. So the way they started talking about it was pretty much, they're having this conversation, and then she's like, oh, well, have you had the talk? Like, have you had the, the sex talk with your daughter? And he was like, yeah, let me tell you, like, me and my daughter, we've had this talk. And then eventually, they're like making light of the situation, laughing about it. And then he literally goes in and starts talking about how every year on her the day after her birthday, he leaves a sticky note on her door.
A sticky note.
Gyno tomorrow at 10 a.m. And I'm thinking, like,
wow,
is he serious? I didn't know if he was lying about this at first, and I was like, that's her birthday present. A gyno visit?
No, he said after she enjoys her birthday.
Yeah,
right.
After
Yeah,
she
that's what he
enjoy her
said.
birthday,
He was like,
do that, turn
I
up.
let her enjoy her birthday, and then the morning after, sticky note on the door.
Gyno in the morning.
Right.
That is sick. But continue.
So, I mean, yeah, it was just, I feel like for any woman, it's uncomfortable. And, Deja's 18 years old. I'm 19 right now. I will be 20 very soon. But it just made me feel very uncomfortable to the point where, like, I almost wanted to call my dad and be like, how do you feel about this? Because I mean, the first time I went, I was by myself, and I was 18, and I was like, I wouldn't want my dad to be here with me. I didn't even want my mom there with me. Like, I went by myself, and, in the podcast, he does say, like, oh, the doctors walk in, and they're like, oh, I just need to make sure that I get permission from her. And then he's like, Deja, they want you to sign this. Go ahead and sign that. I'm like, and then the girls are laughing like, oh my gosh, she's a prisoner. Ah, ha, ha. And I'm like, no, literally, who's going to go save Deja? Because she is a prisoner. Like, what's happening?
Free Deja.
The hashtag free Deja.
Right. So what do you say, Mariana, to people who will be like, T.I. is an old school parent? I mean, I mean, that's not an excuse to me. I don't even think old school parents went that far, but what do you think of people who say that?
Hell no. My parents are like definition of old school. Like they're 75 years old. I'm 25. They had me like really late in life.
Oh, wow.
All right.
Okay.
So and they're foreign. Like they're super old school. But even my dad will, I don't even feel comfortable talking of stuff like this with my dad, but he did make it an effort to be like, hey, I want you to be responsible. It's your choice. Like, even being old school, you know?
Right.
Even when I saw that, I was just like, I have so many questions. Like, I was like, first off, did she ask for this? Like, that's my first question. Because maybe for real, this is just all media, right? And he's just trying to get a hype out of it, make money, whatever. Because that happens. We don't know the truth,
it's
right?
It's a possibility.
She hasn't come out and said nothing. She just likes stuff or unfollows. So we don't know. And she asked him to be a part of that, to be accountability. That popped in my head because I was like, wait, maybe. But then in my head, I was like, I wouldn't even if I wanted that accountability in life, like, I don't think I would go to my father for that. Like, that's not someone I would go to.
Isn't your mom usually, or if you have an older sister or something like that, usually the person you go to for, like, because, okay, this is a question for both of you, but I'm going to start with you. When you get your period, right, and you're making that next step into womanhood, how is that feeling, first of all? And it's like, isn't your mother the one you want to go to confide in her about these things, not your dad?
For the most part. I've always been open to like everybody, so I don't really care like who I talk to. But for me, like the first thing I had, I was like, all right, what's going on? I was like, Mom, like something's going on. And she was just like, yeah, like you're gonna get this monthly for the rest of your life. I was like, the rest of your life?
Yeah.
But like I was like,
until menopause.
Right.
I know. And then I went to school, and then school taught me more than my parents did, to be real, because like they're real old school. They're just kind of like, we don't talk about it unless like it's an issue or you got to talk about it. So like that's how they are.
Right.
So yeah, you go to your mother, you go to like people you're comfortable with. So we don't know their relationship, right? But one thing I will say in the basis of everything is like, even if that was the case, let's just say like in an ideal world that she's just like, yeah, I need that accountability. This is something I asked for. Let's just say that. We don't know. Could be wrong. What if she didn't give consent for him to talk about it? Because I don't want my sex life to be told to the world. And then I'm not there to like.
And that's embarrassing.
That is
too.
my life.
That's
that
embarrassing.
Nothing to do. And now there's memes about it. People are like, come on, man. Like he had to think like I'm a famous rapper. Like, and I'm talking about my daughter's sex life without her present or her consent. Like that's a whole other side of this that I feel like people aren't even like talking about.
That's a whole other dynamic. You're
and I'm like, dang, like there's so many, like I want to peel back the layers because I'm like, there's so many things like in like all the questions I had that I'm like, ultimately, unless she speaks out, like we're not gonna have any answers, right? Because for me it's wrong because A, she's not there. I can't imagine a female being like, let my dad, a male, talk about my sex life. Hell no. I would never, like me personally, never ever be okay with that.
Right.
Like that's my story to tell. That is something that if I feel comfortable talking about. So we don't know their relationship, but ultimately where I'm looking at it, I'm like, there's so many things that just happen that are just like not okay with me. Like even just talking about it in general without her present, even like this happening without her consent, or if she were to be like, yo, you know what, Dad, I want that accountability.
Like, look, I'm still a virgin, Dad. Goodness.
Yeah. Or maybe she was just like, whatever. But but then to talk about it on top of that, like, I don't know. There's just so many things that are just like not rubbing me the right way about this whole situation that I'm just like, I want her to speak so bad. It's so bad.
And I mean, going back to the question that you were asking, like, do you want to go to your mom? For me, my comfort was Google. Like me and my mom, like coming from a Hispanic family, like you said, it's one of those things where it's like we don't really talk about these things unless it's like a really big issue that needs to be solved.
Or I have to. Yeah.
Right. And so Google was my comfort. Like I was Googling things, and then I had a cousin that I was very close to, and so I had the conversation with her, like, hey, like what's really going on? You know what I'm saying? But when it happened to me, I didn't have my older sister here, which would probably be the person I'd want to talk to.
Right.
When it happened to my little sister, she came to me. So then it's like, I really doubt that any woman would want to go to a man who doesn't really understand what's going on, you know? And, you know, Kevin Hart talked about it in one of his little stand-ups about the first time his daughter got her period, too. And it was really funny and whatnot, but it's one of those things, you know, he wasn't prepared. And, like, as a man, I don't really think that any man is prepared, even single fathers, for, like, the first time their daughter goes through something like that. But, yeah, just like you were saying, I had the same thought, you know, like, even if Deja was okay with this and she gave her consent as far as, like, hey, yeah, dad, like, we can go and we can do this. I just don't think that it's cool for 3 grown adults to sit in a room and talk about the sex life of an 18-year-old.
Yeah, 100%.
Like,
how?
And she's an adult. Like, if you're an adult, you know what I'm saying.
She is an adult.
My point is, like, he's literally forcing her to sign these papers so that he can get, you know, his results of the Hymen or whatever, which is another topic that's really
Which can be
stupid.
broken by horseback riding or riding a bicycle or different things.
You know, athletic activities, things that you would have absolutely no idea. Like,
Right.
and he was like, well, Deja don't do none of those
Yeah, he
things.
said that. Remember
And
that?
I'm like,
Deja don't horseback ride. She don't ride bikes.
Right, so
We rich.
Deja's never going to ride a bike because now Deja's scared that if she breaks it, Daddy's going to be like, how is he going to
And
react?
that's the thing. What is the consequence going to be?
Right.
Because he's like
Right.
putting, like, hey man, if I come to one of these gyno appointments and your hymen is not intact,
Right?
like what will be the
will happen?
consequence?
Yeah, but also, do y'all realize, like, kids are gonna find ways around shit,
That's what I
right?
was
Like,
thinking, yeah.
I'm like, anal exists. You can't check that. What? It's true.
Hold on. She did text me and she was like, hey, can I say everything on this podcast? And I was like, you got freedom. So I
told
said,
you
go
did
ahead.
not want to give me that freedom. but
Right.
You were saying
Yeah.
yes.
Go ahead.
No, and I mean,
Your hands exist. Your mouth exists. I mean,
Go
yeah.
ahead with your anal.
I didn't say nothing about myself. I'm just saying children will
Right,
find a
right.
way around things. So you know what? If I if I was back then and that was happening to me and I wanted to, I'd find a way, but it doesn't mean I'm going to do all that. But like,
right.
they're going to find a way. So what? You can't check that. You can't check if she's
Yeah.
never seen it. You can't check if she's ever sucked it. You can't even check if she held something. You can't even check if
Right.
someone's been down there. Like, fingers don't break hymens. Like, come on now. T.I., you really think there's one thing's
Yeah.
that keep her pure? There's more than just breaking your hymen to be pure. Like, there's even, like, that's why I'm just like, dang, like, he thinks, like, really, like, this is gonna be, like, my
Like,
form of
very-
control. And I'm like, you don't even
And
know.
girls are smart too, so she probably. I don't want to speak on
I
another
mean,
man's
you know,
daughter, but
and strict parents raise sneaky children.
wild kids.
I was one of
Bad.
them, but I wasn't like...
And you know, like I've known from knowing friends that were like, oh yeah, I can't really go out, but it's okay, I'll just sneak out through my window, or
Mhm.
I'll just, you know, do this and that. And it's like they just gonna try to find ways around this, because I feel like sometimes the more rules you set down for a child, the more they want to break it sometimes. Like
For sure.
they want to feel that, you know, like they're being rebellious or
It's
whatever.
like whatever you've been held back from, you want to see what. Why was I
don't
being
you
held
want me
back
to
from
do
this for
it?
so
Right.
long?
Why don't you want me to do it?
Yeah.
100%.
And you know, like you said, I just think he has a control problem, because if I asked my father, I'm sure he wouldn't even want to go to the gyno appointment.
Ow! What?
He would be like, go
Ask
with
your
your mom.
mom.
Right. He'd be like,
Yeah,
go with your mom. So I
That's
mean,
true.
it's
Oh,
just,
man.
but yeah, the whole just the whole topic was very uncomfortable, and then it was discussed on other platforms like The Real. They're like,
Oh, The Real. Yeah.
Yeah, and
With
I
Lonnie,
just-
Adrian, Jeannie,
And again,
Tamara.
right.
Yeah.
And again, I felt like it was
Mhm.
one of those conversations where everybody just kind of wanted to agree with the leader of the conversation. Like, people kind of felt like, oh, well, she's saying this. Let me kind of just go with what she's saying, because I think
Yeah.
that what she's
And Jeannie
saying is
actually
cool.
agreed with what T.I. was doing.
Right. And
Because she was like, I was a wild girl and, you know, blah, blah, blah. So I agree with what he's doing. And, you know, I used to
Yeah,
sneak boys in my
no.
room and all that good
definitely.
stuff.
Even like,
No.
and I had my whole like, wow. So I definitely see where like I would have needed some guidance in my life, 100%. But would I want my father to be the one to do that when he has no idea of my experience, like at all, even as a child growing up in America in general, but then as a female, and then also being under strict, like all of these, like we have completely different just mindsets everything. The things I
Right.
go through every day, my dad doesn't even have to think about. Like me
Right.
walking down the street, he doesn't have to think about that. Like he's
Right.
fine. So yeah, I would not ask him to do any of these things or be comfortable with even going to advice with him because he has a completely different worldview and experience than I do, even walking around daily. There's things that he's not even going to be thinking about that I have to think about all the time. But my guidance would have been probably another female because I can look at them and be like, you know what? You probably go through the same thing I go through
Right.
that men aren't even going to
It's
think
the
about.
relatability.
Right.
And guys, we will be right back after a break.
To my listeners that's under 30, that's single, no kids, I have a question. When you hear the terms life insurance, health insurance, or annuities, what is the first thing you think about? If you're like me, it's a whole people, 50, 60, 70, or people who's married and have kids. That's what I would think about when I thought about life insurance or health insurance or annuities. And that's until I met this short little Mexican guy by the name of Albert Diaz. Albert is a financial consultant, and he is the person who made me realize the importance of getting on top of your finances at a young age, no matter if you're married or not, or if you have kids or not. He made me realize the importance of setting yourself up for greatness when it comes to your finances at a young age. This guy helps people make money, save money, and pay less taxes. And you don't need $1,000 to get started. That's a myth, and Albert will help you realize that. Give Albert a call at 713-899-8107. Again, that's 713-899-8107. Be sure to tell him that the All That Podcast sent you.
All right, guys, we are back. So that was a very good first half of the show. But I want to talk about now the double standard in parenting. I was going to focus on the dads, but really moms too, because moms are way harder on the girls than they are on the boys. So I know for a fact, me being a boy, sex was almost encouraged.
Don't say almost.
Sex was encouraged.
Be honest.
Right.
Right. It was
Trying to make
encouraged.
things
Not,
PD.
maybe not even just straight out like, hey, man, you need to be screwing. But it was like, hey, man, you got a girlfriend yet? Hey, man, what you doing? Oh, man. You know, your uncle's like, oh, man, the boy, they got a taste of that. No, you know what I mean? You got some hair on your chest.
Yeah.
No, boy, you know. So these are the conversations that, you know, males have with their, you know, their sons or their nephews or whatever. But when it comes to sex and girls, it's like taboo to even speak about. Do you guys have any of those experiences within your own situation?
Hell yeah.
Right, yeah.
Oh, you did?
So, I mean, I think that as a woman, just when you're younger and you're kind of getting into that age where, you know, kids and, like, teens start to explore things like that, like, it's always like, I don't know if y'all seen that movie Mean Girls, but they're like, don't have sex because you'll get pregnant and you'll die.
Who hasn't seen Mean Girls, first of all? If you haven't seen Mean Girls.
Like, it's like, you'll get pregnant and you'll die. Like, I mean, as a young girl, your body is not really yours. Like, everybody's telling you what you need to do with it, you know, how you need to act. You know, that, oh, don't sit like that, that's not ladylike. Oh, don't speak like that, that's not ladylike. And, you know, when I was younger, I was, like, super tomboyish, and my mom was always, like, on me. Like, that's not ladylike. Sit like a lady, sit right. And, you know, I don't have any brothers, but I know, like, from my cousins being really close to me that for them, it was, like, they could really do whatever they wanted. And it wasn't like you can't really tell a boy that's not ladylike, you know, or that's not proper, because it didn't really matter for them.
Gentleman-like.
And I mean, going back
Start
to
that wave though.
Right.
Going back to Deja's thing, like, I know that T.I. is not going with his son to the doctor to check on whatever, or I know he's not worried about his son being a virgin. Like, if anything, he's encouraging. His son is 19 years old.
If anything, it's a sense of pride that he is not a virgin.
Right. Because, that's how men are with their sons. And even moms at times, you know, it's like, they're okay with that. Like, mothers kind of like their sons are like their little boys, and they don't, you know, they like
Y'all get coddled a little bit.
right.
We do.
They're the favorites always.
For sure.
For real. I
For
will
sure.
say for me, like, I have 2 older brothers. We have a huge age difference, but like, even at my age now, at 25, my mom would tell me, like, save it till you're married, save it till you're married, save it till you're married, like over and over and over, and like nothing else. Like, that's the only thing you got to do. Yeah. And then to my brothers, it was like, here, let me, like, on the sly give them condoms. So, like, how are you? I'm like, well, how come? What is this double standard? He's like, well, because he's a boy. And I was like, ooh. Like, even when I was younger, I'd be like, that made me so mad. Because till this day, my brother, like, I have a 40-year-old brother and I have a 36-year-old brother. And I'm 25. And me and my brother, we live with our dad right now. Like, both of us do. My middle brother. He is 36 years old. He can have his 20-year-old girlfriend come over and, like, be up in his bed, right? And, like, no problems. I can't even have anyone come to my house, or even to the driveway. My dad said not even to the driveway.
I don't want him crossing the driveway.
Yeah, he's like, he can pick you up. He was like, he can pick you up from the end of he can maybe walk up, ring the doorbell, but, like, if I don't want him in my driveway, like, da-da-da. I was like,
none of that.
And I'm, like, looking at him, I'm like, I used to live by myself, you know? So I'm looking at him like, all right, it's your house, whatever your rules. But in my head, I'm like, how does that make sense? Right. And he's just like, yeah, maybe it is. Like, now in his old age, he's getting, like, a little soft on crime. I still haven't had a man or a boy or anyone in my house of the opposite sex, just because to me, I'm just, like, not worth it. Yeah. But also, he kind of, like, is starting to think, like, oh, maybe you're right. And I'm like, it's about damn time. You're 7 years old. Like, let's get to it, you know?
You know, I don't have a daughter, but I have a sister, you know, my little Zoe that y'all see on Instagram all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I understand to a certain extent because it's like your little girl. It's like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like something there. It's like, I don't want her to lose that innocence. It's like, don't, you know, for boys, it's like, whatever.
Yeah,
but as I'm maturing, and, you know, I'm the oldest out of my siblings, so I didn't do this with that sibling. Like him, I was probably a bad influence on.
He's like, don't call me out like that.
But we're only 4 years apart, so that's why. You know, I wasn't as mature as I am now to give him, you know, the advice that I give my baby brother. And so now, you know, once I started thinking about that, I give my baby brother the same advice that I give my sister. They're the same age.
Yeah, they are.
I tell him, I say, hey, man, keep your... And it's because my relationship, me understanding sex on a different level.
Soul ties and all that.
And, you know, and it's like, even though I might, you know, I love sex. I mean, I don't want to say, you know, I'm stuck in my ways because I'm not. I'm maturing. But, you know, it's one of those, you know, don't do as I do as I say type of thing. So my baby brother, so I was like, hey, man, you know, keep your virginity, knowing he probably won't, but it'll give him a goal. Like, it'll give him something. Like, it'll be in the back of his mind. Like, he won't be hoeing. You know what I mean? Right. So I give him that same advice because I became conscious of that double standard. Because, one, you know, like, we fear. Like, oh, my sister gets pregnant. Okay. My brother gets somebody pregnant as a teenager or something. So you know what I mean? It's the same thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? Now he wants to play football, right? He got his whole life planned out. He's going to go to LSU. He's going to play football. He's going to go to the league. That could be a hindrance. Yeah. That could be a hindrance in that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, yeah, and just all that, like you said about the soul ties and all that. Sex is a very. We can have a podcast just on sex. Period.
We really could.
But it's a very complex conversation to have, and I think that we need to start having those conversations. Men need to start having this conversation.
Yeah,
with other
because
men.
At the end of the day, who are men going to have sex with? Like, I want to say like 80% of the time is going to be women, right? So if we're having only talks to our like women, they ain't all going to like, come on. We catch up after a while, right? Mm-hmm. If the whole world's trying to sexualize us, but you're telling me to keep it in my pants, but then like my brother's like, free willy everywhere. Like, come on, man. Like, let's get it together. Like my whole thing is I just want it to be like a standard for everybody. Because at the end of the day, you're right. It could hinder his life, but also you don't always end up with who you want to be with that you have children with, which to me is like, it makes things a lot more complicated in your future. Mm-hmm. It's not always a bad thing or there's no bad, wrong, whatever. But it's for my children, I always say, hey, like female or male alike, I want you to create your family and be with that person, and that person's your forever. And like, that is who you're going to create your family with. I'm not saying like it's wrong or whatever, but like it just makes life easier in a way, right? So like to me, I just think it's important that those conversations are to have in both sides, because I've met a lot a lot of men that have struggled with a lot of insecurities, a lot of issues that I'm like, they're like kind of sending off this feminine energy because they've attached themselves so much to these females that really just like don't even have like any like really connection to what they should be while they're having sex, right? Because you're giving yourself
She's
away.
Getting deep.
But it's true. I mean,
Yeah,
I just
it's
want
true.
those conversations to be both sides. That's it. Like, STDs is still a thing for both people. You know, pregnancy is still a thing for both sides. Like, those are things that people need to be aware of that not only women go through, men go through too, you know?
For sure. And I'm not saying that he's a bad person or even a bad parent because he does this. Just this singular thing is probably a little extra. But this situation just points to all this, you know, this patriarchal society that we still live in. Like, so all of our views of, you know, women's role in society comes mostly from religion, right? And then, you know, we got politics. And then, you know, like the Civil Rights Bill was signed in 1968, I want to say, 65, 68, one of those. And, you know, most people attribute that to black people and black people getting the right to vote. But also, women got the right to vote. And that was like 50-something years ago. It's like like, it was not that long ago. Women could not vote.
Yeah.
And so here we are in 2019. And, you know, we see this famous person, like, doing, like, going to with his daughter to the gynecologist and kind of, like, not allowing her to have freedom when it comes to her own
or just ownership
body.
of her own body.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and like I said, she's 18 years old. Like, she's an adult. Like, if you could decide who your president is, you could decide what you do with your thing.
Tweetable moment.
Like, no, seriously though, it's like you are trying to, you know, prevent an adult from doing these. Like, she's an adult. You know, like, you can't. If she gets to a point where she says, like, I don't want to sign these papers for you because I don't want you to know, you know, what's going on, then what? Like, you can't force her.
Yeah, but you can still hold things over for her, over her head. So like,
I'm
maybe
not paying for your college.
Yeah,
Right.
like
Your hymen not intact.
Yeah,
Right.
like come on.
That
It's
is
just
funny. That's
to
not
me,
funny, but it's
there's
funny.
so many layers to this that like you said, he could be a great parent, except for like because we all have our flaws, right? No one's
sure.
the perfect parent, and this could be one of his flaws, right? So I'm just like, I get what he's trying to do, but I feel like you need to take that trust back. Because to me, that's also saying, like, I don't trust you. Like, I'm going to take you to a gynecologist because our relationship lacks enough trust for you to have that conversation with me and be like, you know what? Hey, Dad, you know what? I am saving myself for marriage. That should be all it takes to me. Like, you should have that trust.
And like I said earlier, I feel uncomfortable speaking on a man's daughter. But I just have to say this because he put the information out to the public. So, you know, everything else from now is free game.
I mean,
but and she's 18, presumably is about to go to college. So for a young guy at that college, she's a prized possession because she's a virgin. And I'm the one who broke the hymen. Like, that's like a trophy now. Like, our hymen is like a prize. Like, I got the hymen. Like,
I mean, and it's crazy because, like, it is. It's funny, but I just think it's crazy because, I mean, I came from a high school. Like, in my high school, when I went in freshman year, there was, in one of my classes, a 14-year-old girl that was big pregnant, like, ready to just pop out the baby. She, after the first semester, she had it, and it was like, Deja is about to go to college. Like, I just feel like sometimes parents don't realize how good they have it with their kids. Like, if Deja is a virgin, if that's, like, your prized possession as a parent, is that your daughter is still a virgin, like, it could really be so much worse. Like, and like you said, there's not that relationship of trust. And, you know, it's like you need like this hard proof that really means nothing because a broken hymen means absolutely nothing.
Right, because it could be, like we said earlier, broken in so many different ways.
I just think, you know, like I said before, she's an adult. I think that she should be able to decide what she does with her life. And, you know, like I said, there's 15, 14, 16-year-old girls that are pregnant. And, I mean, that's when these things start to happen, you know, and it's a control. I think it's a control issue.
Yeah.
I do think that it's a control issue. I think that because I'm not a mother, but I have a niece, and I do understand what you're saying as far as your sister like wanting to keep that innocence of her. But it's like one of those things, like you can tell somebody not to do something so many times, but then if they want to figure it out, they still want to do it. Like,
and I want to say this before we go to break. A lot of the time that we are hard on the girls in our families is because we know how we are.
Right.
So we like, there is men like me out there, so I don't want you to run up on a guy like me. And
I feel like that's the issue with him.
For sure. It's like, just like I saw somebody on Twitter say, T.I., just say that you don't want your daughter to give to somebody like you. You know what I mean? Just say that.
But he's also kind of like defining, like, because I want to be real careful to define women as only by their sexual parts or if their hymen stat. Like, that's not who she is. If she were to have sex, not have sex, that doesn't define her as a person. So I'm just kind of like, there's so many things. Like, you need to bring that trust and also realize, like, your daughter isn't just, whether or not she's a virgin, that doesn't define her in, like, this big way all the time. Exactly.
So, we will be back, guys.
Hey guys, we have new merch up on the website. We have these dope All That hoodies. Go check them out at www.kyreneveau.com. That's KHYRIENEVEAUX.
All right, guys, we're back. The last thing I want to talk about and ask you two ladies is, how can we as men have better conversations with our daughters, our sisters, our nieces, our cousins? Like, as a female, what would be your ideal conversation with a male figure in your life about sex?
Okay. For me personally, just because I've gone through a lot of phases in my life, so like looking back, right? A part of me wants to like also tell myself stuff like this. So my dad did a pretty decent job, I'll say that. He said, hey, you know what? This is uncomfortable. First thing I want the male to like actually acknowledge is this going to be real uncomfortable, but we kind of got to do this, right?
Right.
Just to get that out, because like that'll just already loosen people up. Second off, I want any male figure that's talking to their daughter to be cognizant of how they do speak about this, because they don't know exactly what their goal is. So ask them, what is your goal with sexuality in general, right? Because they have to have that choice.
Right.
And also trust that whatever you guys talk about is between the two of you and it's confidential, because for me, like talking about sex or someone's sex life should never be public domain. You don't go to your buddies, your uncles. You don't tell, like, this is between the two of us. And also just, like, show support and be like, hey, like, I completely agree it's your choice. Here's some advice, what I would want to tell you, because I know how, I grew up, how I was. And be honest. Be like, listen, like, I was a dog, like, totally honest. Like, my dad was honest with me. And I'm really grateful for that, because it kind of made me realize, like, dang, because you idolize your father in a lot of ways, right? And you think that they're like this big, like, heroic figure, but at the same time, they're also just man. Right. So just kind of keep it real, be honest, and like give advice, but also realize, like, ultimately it's your decision, and I'm just going to support you and what you want to do, right? But also be like, hey, I would prefer, just because I have seen with my wisdom X, Y, and Z, right? Whatever
I would
that
prefer if you keep your hymen intact. But
it's not be that graphic, but you know what I'm saying? Yeah, for sure. But at the same time, like, acknowledge it's their choice and make sure they know that there's that trust there. Right. Like, I'm not gonna be checking up on you, but like, I trust that you're gonna make the right decision based on not only the wisdom I have, but also just like whatever goal that you may have in this. Because we got to be real careful of how you speak about sexuality to young girls,
for sure,
to not let it define them, because it's our whole lives we've been defined by sex, and I really hope that stops one day. So you got to be real careful and tread lightly on that. Right. That's how I would like it, at least.
What about you?
I think it's not just a matter of a conversation. I do think that it starts a little bit earlier, especially if you're a parent. Like, you can't go by your whole life never having a conversation with your kids and never having a relationship with trust, and then one day being like, hey, let's talk about sex. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like,
No, for sure.
Hey, it's about that time.
right. So, I mean, like I said, my parents and I were never very close to talk about those things, but my dad, like you said, has been honest with me in the past about certain things. And, I mean, just pretty much touching up on what you said, you have to be careful and not making it seem like, oh, if you have sex, you're disgusting. Or like, if you have sex, like you're ruined. Like you're not pure, you're not innocent, you're not, because that's kind of the way it's presented sometimes. It's like, oh, when you lose your virginity, you become kind of like this worthless thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because for a lot of people, the whole like, oh, like you said, it's like a prized possession. Like like you are the winner of the prize if you're the one that breaks the hymen.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like, I wish that we could make it a thing to where girls know that even if something does happen, because a lot of times, what if she didn't want to have sex? You know what I'm saying? What if it was something that, especially young girls, something that she was pressured into and now she don't want to talk about it because she's afraid of you thinking that she's dirty or tainted, right?
Yeah.
Or like you're going to look down on her. Like, think about it in the way that I think about my niece. And, I think like if something ever were to happen to her, like I want her to be able to talk to me and tell me like this happened. You know what I'm saying? I don't want sex to be so taboo that it's something that she feels like if something happens to me, like I could never speak on this
ever. Or that I'm in trouble, or
right?
like something
like
like
you
that.
didn't do if they didn't do anything wrong. You know what I'm saying? And it's a normal thing. Like it's part of life and part of growing up. People experience life at different rates, and I think that as a father, if you do want to, have this conversation, the first step is trying to find somebody who knows what they're talking about. Like you right now are having the conversation with us. Like, what would you guys do? You know what I'm saying? Like maybe asking a woman, what's your perspective on this? What do you think is the right thing? Because we're all human and, we don't have the right answers. Nobody really has the right answers for anything. There's no blueprint for life. But you can make the efforts and you could try. So I just feel like it needs to be a conversation that's not so controversial and like ugly.
Like taboo.
But also, please talk to your sons and your daughters about health, please. That's just like the biggest thing I want to take away as well. Is just like, please, because like at the end of the day, birth control doesn't, because that's something he did like talk to me about. He's like, STDs are real, like like some of them like they're still around and stuff.
For men, women,
everybody, yeah. So
right. So in closing, what I've got from these two women is to be open, be willing to listen, be willing to learn, and don't put your daughters or your sisters or your nieces in a box and realize that they are not defined by sex, but they are a human being who just happens to enjoy sex just like men do. And I think one of the most important things you can say as a man who is a male figure in a female's life is that no matter what you do, no matter if, I know I'm going to have to rewatch this when I have my own daughter to remind myself. But no matter what you do, no matter if you have sex, no matter if you have sex with 20 people, I love you. At the end of the day, I love you. No matter what, I love you. And that would do, I think, it would do so much for a female. Just, I love you. It'll probably eliminate, because a lot of girls strike out sexually because they're trying to compensate for something.
Right.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So if they have that love and support from the top guy in their life, which is their dad, then your daughter will flourish, man. It's like she'll just blossom. So thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Mariana, for coming on and educating us and me and everybody else in the room.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. course. Like I said, I'm definitely going to have to go back and watch this episode when I have a daughter because
Future
don't be
Kyrie.
surprised if you see on the shade, Kyrie Neville goes with his daughter to the gynecologist.
I'll be like,
He was talking all that shit.
We talked about this, Kyrie.
On the
We
podcast,
talked
and now he
about
had the damn
this,
gynecologist.
man.
As a matter of fact, I'm going to gynecologist school. My daughter will be in. All right, guys, that's it for episode 45. Peace.